My name is Tiana, and this story will be very interesting for you. While it was a sad one for me, now I'm just happy I dodged a bullet. I almost married into a judgmental family, but was saved at the last minute. Here is the story about how I escaped a bad marriage. So my life was pretty boring when I was in school. I was a big introvert and didn't date much. It was when I went to college that I met John. He was actually in medical school, and I was pursuing a degree in architecture. Our colleges were close to each other, and we met at a local cafe. It was love at first sight for me. You see, he was one of those very few people who knew how to hold a conversation with me. Naturally, we hit it off and started dating about 2 months after we met. John was a very good student with a great career ahead. He was pretty ambitious and always talked about making it big. I really liked that he was driven and wanted to make something out of his life. John came from a middle-class family with 2 hardworking parents. I could see that we had a lot in common, so it was easy to be with him. However, I never realized that John was actually a pretty judgmental person. This became evident when I took him to meet my family. My father, Gary, was hosting Christmas alone because my mom had to be out of state for work. So I decided to invite John and celebrate Christmas together. I was also super excited to introduce him to my father. However, things didn't go well when they finally met. Initially, things were okay, but when they started talking, John was acting strange. He said, "Gary, your daughter is an amazing woman. I'm so happy to have found her. If you hadn't funded her college education, I may have missed out on meeting her." "Oh, I didn't fund her college, John. I'm a poor plumber, and college money can be a lot. My little girl is pretty talented and landed scholarships right off the bat." "I'm sorry, I don't understand. You are a plumber, but you live in such a good house." "That's all my wife, actually. This was part of her inheritance. Plumbing business is hard, and it rarely pays enough to buy a good house, but it is honest work, so I don't mind. It must be hard earning so little and supporting your family. You are a good role model for Tiana." "Yes, I get a lot of inspiration from Dad. He works very hard to take care of me." John gave me a weird look and changed the topic. The conversation felt strange after that. We had our dinner and opened presents. John was pretty shocked that I got a brand new iPhone. He didn't comment on it, but I could see it was bothering him. After you went home, Dad decided to talk to me about him. He said, "I have a feeling John didn't like me as much. I guess he thought you had rich parents." But I never gave him the idea, Dad. I don't know why he was so surprised. I will talk to him about his behavior. He has been a little rude to you. No, you don't have to mess up your relationships because of me. You hardly date anyway. I'm glad you found someone who loves you. As long as he treats you right, I don't mind if he looks down on me. Yes, that's my dad for you. He values the happiness of his family over everything else. He always puts aside his pride to see us happy." However, I felt mad on his behalf. I knew I had to talk to John about his behavior. However, before I could breach the topic, he invited me over to meet his family. His family stayed in a different city, so I went over to meet them. Right off the bat, I knew that his family was uncomfortable around me. His father, Kevin, tried to be friendly, but his mom, Kelly, was downright hostile. She never smiled or looked at me for too long. John was his usual self, but I could feel him getting tense. I brushed off the awkwardness because I didn't want to ruin the meeting. When we finally started having a conversation, Kelly said, "So, I heard you were a plumber's daughter." "Yes, my father has his own plumbing business. He has been on this job for a while." "How sad is it for you? It must be hard living with such a loser father." I don't understand how people who don't work hard end up having families they can't feed. Excuse me, my father actually does work very hard. I have a decent life. I don't consider my dad to be a loser. Kelly, that was rude. You can't say things like that. Tiana is a guest. Well, it's the truth. I don't care if it's true. I don't know where my son picked up this trash. John, I thought you knew better than to date beneath you. Mom, Tiana's a great girl. She even has a good career. She's not beneath me at all. Kelly, I know your son is going to be a big doctor. I also know that I can't ever match up to him, but that's not what makes relationships successful. My mother. Let's not talk about the poor decisions your mother took in life. My son deserves more because he's set to be successful. That's enough, Kelly. You need to apologize to Tiana. I don't know why you're acting like this. Kelly never apologized, but did shut up after Kevin scolded her. John also steered the topic in another direction. Kevin and I did have some good conversation, but the mood was soured. It was even more evident with the faces Kelly was making. When I went back home, I told John not to contact me for some time. His family really threw me off with their behavior. Sure, his father was great, but his mom is a walking disaster. It didn't help that John never discouraged her rants against my dad. So a few days later, I called him up and asked to meet him. We met at our usual local cafe and started to talk. I said, "Sorry for being so quiet, John." I had a lot going on in my mind. You see, I don't like the way you and your mom talked about my dad. It was downright disrespectful. Sorry, Jenna. My mom is just old-fashioned, so she has some issues with family status. She knows I'm serious about you, so she's looking out for me. I get it, John, but you never defended my father either. You were pretty rude to him when you came to my place. I was just taken aback by your dad, Tiana. I always thought you came from a better family. I was simply surprised. My family is great as it is. If you are going to be judgmental about it, it is better to end it here. That caught John off guard. He started to apologize for his behavior and begged me to give him a chance. I was really pissed at what he had said earlier, but he looked genuinely willing to try and be better. So I gave him another chance. However, I made it clear that I would leave if he continued to insult my family. He apologized for being rude and promised he would try his best. Things were really promising for a few years, mostly because John rarely visited me and my parents. Every time I asked him over, he had his excuses ready. Instead, he always insisted I visit his house and spend time with his parents. Kevin was fun to spend time with, however, Kelly was always nitpicking my choices in life. Everything from my clothes to my lifestyle choices bothered her. She said, "If you want to be with my son, you better change your ways. He has a prestigious career, and your middle-class ways won't be a good look for him." What is wrong with my lifestyle? I don't overspend and try to manage my income without being a spendthrift. Look, being cheap and tacky might have worked out for your parents, but it won't work for John. Our family standards are higher than yours. You need to adapt to them. I always found her words insulting and annoying. However, I refused to fight with her and engage her more than necessary. John was not making weird comments anymore, and that's what mattered. I did try to talk about Kelly's behavior to John. However, he simply said he can't control what Kelly thinks. I could understand his point, so I didn't push the issue any further. John never got to meet my mom. As I said, he never made time for my family. He did have a hectic schedule, and things got worse after he joined work as a doctor. John made time for me, but traveling to meet my family was too much for him. I never pushed him to spend time with my parents. I tried to be cooperative because I knew he had a stressful job. It was 3 years later that he proposed to me. He was already working as a doctor and earning well. I was satisfied with my job as an architect, so we were both ready for marriage. Trust me, I was over the moon when he proposed. It was romantic and perfect. Even the ring was what my dreams were made of. I just couldn't say anything other than yes. However, the worst was yet to come. When I called my parents and informed them about the proposal, they were pretty happy for me. My mom even said that it was time she welcomed him into the family with a big dinner. However, his family had a very different reaction. I was there when he called them. "Mom, Dad, we're engaged. I proposed to her yesterday, and she said yes." "That's great, guys. I'm so happy for you. When is the engagement party, Jana? I can't wait to formally have you as my daughter-in-law." "Thank you, Kevin. I'm happy to join your family, too." "Mom, won't you say something?" "I have a lot to say, but I want to speak to you alone. Come see me tomorrow. We need to talk." With that, Kelly simply hung up on us. We were pretty confused about what had happened. John promised to talk to his mom and sort it out. I don't know what happened between them, but John was pretty upset after their talk. He refused to tell me anything. Kelly was also not returning my calls or even talking to me when I visited. I simply didn't care. I knew she never liked me, and I was done taking her nonsense. John and I were pretty happy with our engagement. We even started to slowly plan a wedding and try to set a date. John got an amazing job at a big hospital in my city, so he was looking forward to moving here. The new hospital was also giving him about 60% more money than his last one. Suffice to say, we were all pretty happy for him. But things were going to become pretty bad for me. You see, before we could even set a date, John decided to have a serious talk with me. One day, he called me and told me that we needed to talk. I was kinda nervous because he had never sounded so serious in his life. I was pretty anxious when I met him. I didn't know that my worst nightmare was waiting to happen. He said, "I'm so sorry, Tiana. I don't think I can be with you. We need to end the engagement." "What, John? Have you lost your mind? What the hell happened? What did I do?" "You didn't do anything, Tiana. It's just that we are not compatible anymore. I do love you, but I think this is for the best." "You can't be serious, John. What are you not telling me? We were doing fine so far." "Don't push it, Tiana. I don't want to upset you anymore. Just know that it's not your fault. It's just the circumstances that you are in." "Oh, so this is about my family. That's why you are leaving, aren't you?" "I'm sorry, Tiana. I really love you, but I have to think of my future." "Save it, John. I don't want to hear it. Consider us done." With that, I simply got up and left. I drove straight home and didn't look back. My parents were there to comfort me. I cried for days in their arms. I told them what had happened. They were furious on my behalf. However, they also said that I was better off without John. Dad, however, felt a little guilty that his background caused me so much trouble. My heart just broke even more. It was about a week later that Kelly showed up at my house. She had this awfully smug look on her face. She stared at everything in distaste and walked into the house. I was surprised to see her here. I said, "What do you want, Kelly? You have no business coming here. I'm here for the engagement ring. My son will need it when he proposes to a better woman. Give it back." He could have told me. "I would have dropped it off at your house. Why are you here?" "Well, I wanted to see you one last time. You see, your parents didn't teach you well. I mean, it was pretty ambitious of you to try to be a doctor's wife. My son is so successful now. He needs more than the plumber's daughter as his wife. So I called him and put some sense into him. So that's why he broke it off with me. You think he is too good for a plumber's daughter. Of course, I made him do it. He was so blinded by you that he was ready to set aside his standards. I had to make him see reason. He is all set to be even more famous by joining the new hospital. You're just not good enough for him anymore. I understood that, Kelly. I'm okay with what he has done. I don't need a judgmental and immature partner anyway. I hope he finds someone with a family that suits his standards. Oh, don't worry, dear. I'm pretty sure he will find someone at the hospital. I heard their board of directors has some pretty daughters. I will help him get one soon. He will forget about you and marry one of them. I was on the verge of laughter when the perfect thing happened. My mom walked in. You see, I texted my mother when Kelly showed up at the house. I had been planning my revenge against them for a while. It was time to make it happen. You see, my mom is actually one of the hospital directors. My late grandpa was also one when he was alive. My mom actually met my father when he was hired for some minor work at the hospital. Initially, Grandpa was against the relationship. They were successful in changing his mind. My mom takes some serious issues when someone looks down on Dad and me. She was super mad when she discovered what happened with John. Now she was here for my revenge. Kelly and John had no idea what was coming. Kelly took one look at my mom and went as white as a ghost. I knew she had done enough research to know who my mom is. Kelly literally shattered and said, "Oh my God, you are one of the directors at the hospital here. What are you doing here?" "Hello there, I'm Erin. You must be Kelly. My daughter said a lot about you." "Daughter?" "Yeah, the one your son ditched a few days ago. I'm sure it must have been hard to date a plumber's daughter." "He didn't mean it that way. I never knew you were Tiana's mother. John never mentioned it." "That's because he never met me. If he had an ounce of respect for my family, he would have made the effort. He did reject a lot of my invitations. I'm a very private person, so I told Tiana to keep my job a secret. The ring, perhaps John will realize he made a mistake." "You mean you will tell John that now I am perfect for him, and then he will try to make things right, and I will take him back. I don't think my plumber father will allow that." "Don't be so harsh. John was being stupid. You can forgive him. You do love each other, right? I'm sure you can overlook that." "There is no need for that. My daughter is better off without a judgmental idiot like him. By the way, it's good that we met. I need you to pass a message to your son. Tell him that the hospital will take back the job offer. He can look for employment elsewhere." "What? No, please don't do this. John is a great doctor. He will be an asset to your hospital." "Absolutely not. John might be a great doctor, but he is a horrible person. We don't want judgmental and greedy people in the hospital. He knows we have a morality clause. There is no way we will hire someone who looks down on people." Please, this is a misunderstanding. I'm sure John will make it right. He already left his other job for your hospital. Don't do this to him. We will do anything to change your mind. Tiana, please talk to your mom. She makes her own decisions, Kelly. Oh, here's the ring you asked for. Now that you have it, you can leave." No, please keep the ring. We can talk this out." Kelly just kept begging us to change our minds. She made all kinds of promises to save John's job. She even offered to apologize to Dad and beg for his forgiveness. Mom said that she won't allow Kenny anywhere near her family again. With that, we promptly kicked her out while she was crying her eyes out. After Kelly left, I did get multiple calls and texts from John. He was begging me to make my mother reconsider her decision. He also accused me of sabotaging his career. I simply replied that he did this to himself. For this next step in my revenge, I told all my mom's friends about what happened. They were appalled by John's behavior. Word spread, and almost everyone in the industry knew about John's actions. So he was being rejected by all the prestigious hospitals in the state. Most of them knew my mom and respected her a lot, so they refused to hire someone who betrayed her family. John and Kelly pretty much harassed me every day to change my mind. They kept begging me to come back. Even Kevin called me up. However, he just apologized for his family's behavior. He also said that Kelly had spoiled John on his future. They have had multiple arguments about me in the past. Kevin had finally decided to separate from her. He just couldn't stay with someone so cruel and manipulative. I wished him the best and told him that he deserved better. My life pretty much went back to normal in a few months. The calls and texts from Kelly and John stopped when I threatened to sue for harassment. Kevin told me that he had kicked them out and they had to move to a different state. John did find a job, but it wasn't earning well. Additionally, he had to shoulder the expenses of his mother. John was now blaming his mother for ruining his life. He's actually regretting his life choices, while I am having the time of my life.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, "I'm moving to the sales department soon." If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. "Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. "It's still working hours." Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. "Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us." "The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one?" As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments, and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.